Hello students, today our topic is modal verbs. In English there are a lot of modal verbs, but today we are going to focus on modal verbs of suggestion, obligation and probability. So, what are modal verbs of suggestion? When do we use them? We use them to recommend something, to suggest something, and they can be divided into three groups. The first group is strong suggestion. Then we have a moderate and a mild one. If you want to make a strong suggestion to recommend something, so you should use these two verbs, should or ought to. For example, you should attend classes. That is important. That is a strong suggestion because if you don't attend classes, you can actually fail the course. Then a moderate suggestion can be done using the verbs could or in negative form couldn't. For example, you could read more. That is like, let's say, moderate suggestion. I think that it's a good idea for you to read more, so you could read more books. And then we have a mild suggestion that is used with the verbs may and might. For example, you may or you might buy books in a new store. That is a mild suggestion. You can buy books in another place, but this one, I think it's a good store, so I kind of suggest you going to that store. So remember, modal verbs of suggestions: should, ought to, could, may and might. Okay, remember that modal verbs, they're always used with another main verb after them, and the verb that follows modal verbs should be in infinitive form. Modal verbs should, could, may and might are used without to. However, ought to always is used with this particle to. For example, you ought to attend classes. Okay? The next group of modal verbs, they are modal verbs of obligation. Again, they can be strong obligation or mild obligation, and also to this group belong the modal verbs that are used for prohibition or the lack of obligation. What about strong obligation? You can use modal verbs must and semi-modal have to speak about strong obligation, something that is extremely important. For example, I have to take this test. There is no other way. That is an obligation for me as a student. I have to or I must to take this test. Then if it's a mild obligation, so for this case you can use again should and ought to. For example, I should eat less sugar. I think that I'm eating a lot, so in this case I can use the verb should for a mild obligation. If you want to speak about prohibition, you can use these two options: modal verb mustn't, must in its negative form, or modal verb can in its negative form, so cannot, mustn't or cannot. For example, you cannot smoke here. It's forbidden, or you mustn't smoke here. And then finally, if you want to speak about the lack of obligation, something that is not necessary to do, you can use these two semi-modals: don't have to or don't need to. For example, he doesn't need to work on Sundays. Why they are semi-modals? Remember, semi-modals, they actually can change their form. For example, I don't have to, he doesn't have to. In the past, you can say he didn't have to study yesterday or something. But if we speak about modal verbs, they usually only have one form. Must can be just used in this form, or for example, the verb should. So they cannot be changed in any form or in any way. Okay? And well, now let's talk about modal verbs of probability, the last group of modal verbs for today. So again, if we speak about probability, it can be like a high level of deduction of probability, the moderate and low. If we are almost 100% sure in something, we can use modal verb must in affirmative sentence or mustn't in a negative sentence. Let's look at this example. He must be at home at this hour. That's already 9 p.m. You know that he finishes his work at 6. So you're like sure that this person is at home now. And in this case, we use the verb must. Okay? If it's a moderate probability, so let's say we are like 50% sure, we can use should, or for negative sentences, shouldn't. They should be here soon. Yeah, that's already the hour for our meeting. They're a bit late, but they called us, so you know that they're coming. Yes, so that's why we can use should. We don't know for sure at what hour, but we know that they're coming. And let's say low probability, when we are less than 50% sure. Like, yes, so it's just like some possibility. Yeah, for the future, we can use might, may, or could. She may go to China next year, but it's just a very vague plan. Nothing is for sure, yes, just like a small possibility for the future for her to go to China. So these are modal verbs for today. Please remember them well and good luck.